Hi guys, what we have here is the Martian Anniversary Edition, which is basically the updated Martian that Banggood was selling during their 11th anniversary. And I basically bought one of these. In fact, I bought a couple of these. The reason being is when I bought the first one it was £13 I think, which was incredibly cheap. And during the couple of days of their anniversary, I think it dropped down to £10.87, which is just, you know, incredibly cheap. And for that price, I couldn't really say no. So this frame is slightly different than the Martian 2 that everybody knows about. The major difference, or should I say the only difference really, is the way that the arms are mounted. On the Martian 2, you got a you got basically a PDB which covered this section here and acted as a structural part, and on the other side you had basically a fiberglass plate which held it together. And one of the reasons why I never bought a Martian 2 was that I hated the thought of a PDB being part of the structural elements of the quad. So on this one they've changed it slightly. There's no PDB. You get this X-shaped carbon plate which bolts onto the bottom, the base plate of the quad itself. And to my mind, that's a much better solution. Now the arms themselves look like the arms from the Martian 2 180mm version, but I haven't double checked that. The one thing I don't like, if I'm being really critical, is that on the original Martian 2 the arms brace themselves in the middle, whereas on this version they don't. Basically they're held in place by the two bolts and nylon self-locking nuts. So you've got two on each arm, and in the middle you've got four bolts which basically connect to your nylon standoffs. But the bottom line on this is an 11 quid frame, and essentially it's a clone of the Alien frame, which is obviously really popular. Now, in terms of what you get for that 11 quid, I think this is absolutely amazing value for money. Now, is it perfect? No, of course not. The actual fit and finish, everything clips together perfectly, everything slots in, there are no issues there. I mean, hellfire, you could pay 4 or 5 quid for sort of 8 alloy standoffs. The carbon itself is pretty well cut. It is rough, and you'll find this on all Real ACC frames. There are little nicks and scuffs, and it's a little bit rough. You're going to get carbon dust, so wash the frame first if you're concerned about that. But there's nothing really particularly bad. It just needs finishing better, and that's really easy to do. So if you're going to buy one of these, just get a bit of sandpaper or file and just smooth it down, and then simply use CA glue or even super glue and just work quickly and seal the edges and strengthen it up a little bit. And what you'll have is a really good frame that's cost you absolutely nothing. Now this frame, it has the same camera plate as the Martian 2. It comes with the same camera mount adapter, which basically clips in here and locks your camera in place. You get a little square carbon piece which you can use to protect your flight controller and mount something on top if you wish to do so. You get 4 foam pads to go on the end of your arms to protect the screws when you're landing, and you get quite a few spare self-locking nuts and bolts as well. So for 10 quid it's amazing value for money. There's a few quirks on this frame that I think are just a bit outdated. You've got this plate here which when it was designed, that's where you would run your VTX antenna through. I probably wouldn't even use this, just get rid of it and give yourself more space for your battery, because that part doesn't really need reinforcing. You know, if your battery's sat up here, realistically what's going to hit this bit? Not a lot really. It's probably better just to run your antenna out the back, which is pretty common these days. The actual carbon itself feels pretty good. There is a little bit of flex where it attaches to the arm, but that's more the actual base plate as opposed to the arms. There's good and bad things about mounting your arms like this using these self-locking nuts. On a really good frame, what you'll find is after you've crashed a number of times, basically the hole that the bolt runs through will start eroding slightly, and you'll always find your arms will become a little bit loose, so they'll basically move slightly backwards and forwards, and that applies to every frame. This one, because the holes aren't perfect, actually has a little bit of movement off the bat. Now, you know, let's be frank, we're talking about a 10 quid frame here. It doesn't bother me in the slightest, because when you're flying, your arms really aren't moving backwards and forwards. It's this position, that flex, that you're more concerned about. And as I said, even on the best frames and the best racing frames, you'll always get that after a number of crashes anyway. So the reason I bought this is, if you watch my previous videos, I'm really loving the Hyperlow frame. And basically I wanted another quad similar, but I didn't want to go out and spend another $80 on a Hyperlow frame. So my plan was to get one of these and basically play around with it. There's a few different ways looking at it that I could modify this. One is the way the arms are attached. Two is do something possibly with this top plate to drop it down a little bit and make it low profile. But I think I really like it the way it is. So I think what I'm going to do is build one normally and then just have one to play around with. And the bottom line is, if you're new and you're looking to build your first quad, this is a really good quad, a really good frame to get. And the reason for that is you've got acres of space, and when you're building your first quad, space is the thing that you need to get a clean build. You don't want to be starting off with the smallest, lightest racing frame, because you just end up getting hopelessly confused. Whereas on a frame like this, you've got your camera here, you've got your flight controller here, and you've got your VTX or receiver, etc. at the back. You know, it's really simple. Now, is this going to last as long as Mr. Steele's 150 quid Alien Steele Edition? Probably not. I mean, if you look at the reviews of the Martian 2, you can go from the extremes of it broke the first time I flew it to I've smashed mine 1,000,000 times for the last 10 years and nothing is wrong with it. And I suppose half of those reviews really come down to whether you like the original Impulse Alien or not really. For my mind, it looks like a relatively strong frame. It won't last forever, but if you're building your first quad, your first quad is likely to not be much cop anyway, so the last thing you want to be doing is spending 100 quid on a chameleon frame, or 160 quid on Mr. Steele's Alien, which is basically a normal Alien with a PDB. And let's be honest, we're in 2017 now, most flight controllers come with built-in PDBs anyway. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to have a little mull, and I think what I'll probably do is put it together and build, I suppose, essentially what I think would be a really good first introduction to basically a racing drone, or in this case a freestyle drone. So I'll possibly use the Racer Star 4-in-1 ESC perhaps that I reviewed earlier. I'm going to use a cheap VTX, and I'm just really going to try and put together a really good quad that I would be happy with flying every day, and I will be flying mine every day, but also one that's not going to break your bank, because I think, you know, there's two different ways of looking at this. Yes, you can get sucked into buying the latest sponsored pilots frame and the latest hype train motors and all the rest of it, but the bottom line is, unless you've got the skills, it doesn't matter what you fly. Buying Mr. Steele's frame isn't going to make you the pilot that Mr. Steele is. The only thing that will make you the pilot that he is 2 years of pack after pack after pack each and every day. And while you're doing that, and while you're learning, you're going to be crashing 1,000,000 times, and it's much nicer to crash and break a 10 quid frame than it is to crash and break a 150 quid frame. So that's my 2 penneth. You know, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, that's just my view. I'm going to build one of these for me, and I'm going to probably build one to sell on eBay, just to offload some of the parts that I've got lying around. But yeah, so in my next video on this, I'll start doing possibly a proper build video, and we'll go from there. Cheers guys, thanks, bye.